Welcome to the Bucket Plan on Demand, a podcast for financial advisors based on the best-selling book and process that simplifies financial planning. Hear from skilled industry professionals and special guests each episode that will help perfect your approach with clients and your results.
Welcome to the Bucket Plan on Demand podcast. I'm Kirsten Schlumbohm, Vice President and Head of Annuity Sales here at C2P. Today, we're excited to share something special, a live recording from our recent Women's Clarity event, From Caregiver to Care Supervisor, Navigating the Long-Term Care Conversation. It's a powerful discussion on how advisors can help clients prepare for and navigate the realities of long-term care with confidence, clarity, and compassion. Joining me for this conversation are two outstanding guests from OneTeam Financial. Gina Ference is the Managing Director of Partnership Development. She uses her background in advocacy and relationship building to strengthen community partnerships and lead educational initiatives that empower both clients and advisors. Drew Serzan is a founding partner and head of private client and executive life insurance planning. With more than 20 years of experience and a CLTC certification, Drew designs strategic insurance and wealth transfer solutions for high net worth clients. We're thrilled to bring this live event to our podcast listeners and viewers and hope that you enjoy the insights, stories, and tools shared in this meaningful conversation. I'm extremely excited to have both Gina and Drew with us today. If you weren't aware, November is Long-Term Care Awareness Month. It's not a matter of if you're going to be affected by a loved one or a friend having to navigate the long-term care journey. It's a matter of when. It's not a matter of if. So I'm so excited to have them here. Many of you don't probably know me, but I've been dealing with this for the last 2 years with my own family. So this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart. And Gina and I could probably spend a long weekend with a bottle of wine and solve all the world's problems talking about long-term care and our stories and how we can connect. But you didn't come here to just hear from me. So I'm going to start with Gina. So Gina, please don't make me cry. I know you've done that before, but you have both personal and professional experience with caregiving and long-term care planning. From your perspective, what emotional or psychological barriers have you seen preventing women who are typically caregivers from planning for their own long-term care?
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here. There will be no crying. We might need 2 bottles of wine, but other than that, I think we're good to go. But thanks for inviting us. Drew and I are so excited to be part of the conversation. It's certainly one that I've been experiencing for at least 2 years personally, and it's of course professionally. So I think when we talk about where those barriers come into play is I think women are project managers. Maybe they're a co-pilot that go to a pilot. And as we manage the family and our work and perhaps volunteering and then being the caregiver, the barriers just get brought into it from the emotional, the psychological, the mental, the physical strain. And I think we never get to ourselves, right? So I think that comes into play, and it's how to make that shift. And it makes sense, right? 70% of us after we turn 65 are going to need some type of long-term care. And I personally think that number is going to be much higher. If you go into any residential assisted living community, what I'm noticing everywhere I go are these 100s, the 100 balloons, right? There's a lot of people that are turning 100. Most likely they are women. I will borrow a line from our friend Ash Alawali, who heads up Social Security, and Ash always says, men die and women linger. Men die, women linger. We usually get a chuckle when we say it in person, but it's so true. And first you go, yay, we live longer. But for women, that means first, what's our plan? It's higher healthcare costs. It's more medical conditions. We're usually, as you mentioned, Kirsten, right? We're taking care of the spouse, but we never really get to the plan for ourselves. So I think to overcome it, and Drew and I talk about this all the time, it's think, decide, communicate. It's think about what you need to do, make a decision. And the last piece, which a lot of people just forget to do, is communicate it out to those in your life. I will also add, I think a great way to overcome the barriers is to indulge. So you're going to hear a few personal stories from me, and I say indulge in whatever it is. I put humor into every single day. Drew has been on this journey with me for the last couple years, thankfully, and he hears me vent out every week. But I laugh about it every day. And the indulge piece comes in for me to say whatever it is that you love, whether that's, an exercise or taking 5 more minutes out or little retail therapy, the extra bottle of wine, whatever it is, go do it. Because you're going to need that for the balance. I think when you're in these intense situations, for sure.
I know I find myself doing a lot more running these days, trying to just navigate the stress, the psychological safety of my own self, navigating the relationship with my siblings as we go through this journey. So it's important that you take care of yourself as you're going through this journey. Now, Drew, many of your clients are high income earners with complex financial lives. How do you introduce or start the conversation of long-term planning to clients who may feel financially secure and believe that their wealth alone insulates them from the need from this kind of planning?
Yeah, no, it's great. Great question. And, for me, it really starts with the mindset. I think the reality is wealth doesn't insulate anyone from the emotional, the logistical, and the family impact that Gina's going to talk about, if a long-term care event does arise. So I'll always start with a question, whether it's an ultra high net worth client, or the millionaire next door that we're doing a bucket plan for. The question's going to be, what experience have you had, either directly or indirectly, when it comes to caring for an aging loved one? And I phrase that question very specific because myself, I haven't had that experience, on the family front. I've had it with clients, and I'm going to go into more in depth later about that. But Gina and I are together all the time, so I hear about the emotional side of it, and I think that's the most important part to having the conversation is just asking the question, having people think. It changes the conversation from like the abstract to personal. It allows the client or prospect to reflect, share, and really connect emotionally before we ever even talk about products, funding strategies, or different plans that might be available to them. So I found that this approach is by far the most effective. It opens the door to empathy. And when we're talking about long-term care, it is a personal conversation. It's amazing how maybe, one simple question could really just change the whole dynamic, of the conversation. And the approach that 20 years ago was much different than I think what it is today.
Well, 20 years ago, when I was in the advisor seat, I had traditional long-term care that I could offer my parents, and they were just like, no, we're going to take care of each other, and after that, God will take care of us. So it was a very difficult conversation because we didn't have the solutions then like we do now. But I want to ask you one more question to piggyback on that, Drew. You mentioned the bucket plan. At what point during the bucket plan do you introduce this question? Is it, after you deliver your deliverables, or is it in your how do you approach this during your planning process? Like, at what point?
That's a great question. And it could be either at the beginning or on delivery. Okay. So we've had the conversation, and Gina and I have been a part of this many times, where we may have a referral that comes to us, and the referral is based on the long-term care conversation, right? Typically, it's a successful female, right, who's had some experience, whose maybe friend or colleague came to us. We implemented a long-term care strategy. So we're going to start with the long-term care conversation, but I think it could go the opposite way and could tie into all of, to a full-blown bucket plan. It's not necessarily we're starting with the bucket plan and going to long-term care. In most cases, at least, my experience, it actually goes the opposite way. We're talking about long-term care, and it leads into, how does this plan, this important piece, how does it tie into the overall plan? So it could go both ways. It could be at the beginning, or it could lead into the bucket plan. So we've seen it both ways for sure.
Oh, that makes perfect sense. If you have a long-term care referral, that's first and foremost their number one priority and concern. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Gina, it's important to start long-term care conversations with clients early and often. What are some practical ways advisors can weave this topic into a broader financial or life planning discussion without making the clients feel overwhelmed or fearful?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think that, and we again, we talk about this all the time. I don't sell anybody. I tell stories. And I think when you tell a story, it's just like when I told you a story, Kirsten, then all of a sudden, what happens? You increase the connection, right? You have your story you're sharing with me. There's commonality, you're building the relationship, and all of a sudden it just weaves into, okay, how can we help you? And I think that anytime that I'm presenting in front of women, one of the greatest compliments I get after is women come up to me, they're like, oh my God, you're a work in progress. You don't have it all together. You work at a holistic planning firm. I'm like, oh, no, no, no. I'm climbing the mountain, and my mountain is going up and down and all over the place. And I just trying to map out a roadmap, right, with some information and resources to help people. And I think that, I mean, a couple weeks ago, I was doing a women's conference, and I tell this story about my estate docs all the time. Like 10 years ago, I was the girl writing out the will on the paper towel or the envelope, calling my girlfriend on the way to the airport, like, girl, left-hand drawer under the costume jewelry, like, no kidding. And then you're like, oh, maybe I should do my estate docs. And then people were like so relieved to hear I didn't have them done, but I now have them done. So I ask women to think about, how do you keep your to-do list, right? Whether it's on your computer, your phone, whatever, I keep it on paper. And I have my work to-do list, and everybody knows I do this little highlight thing because I'm so excited that I get to highlight something. And then I have my personal to-dos for the week. And then like way back here where nobody can see is the list of the stuff that really matters. And I go pull it out. And my nickname at OneTeam is G Money. I'm not even going to tell you how we got there, but we did. Ask Greg Dillon. He'll tell you all about it. And so I say, take the G Money challenge and do one thing. Just pick one for the year that's on that long laundry list, because that will alleviate you being overwhelmed, right? And that will let you achieve what you need to achieve for the year. Mine for this year, and I only keep talking about Drew because he's walked through it with me, was I talk long-term care every week. We talk life insurance here a lot. I had neither one. I'm like, okay, I think it's time. Yes, look at Kirsten's face. Nope, I
Gina,
need the
put our
one.
oxygen mask on first. So this makes you highly relatable to female clients, because they're very used to saying, I'm gonna put everybody else's oxygen masks on first. I'll take care of myself later. It's powerful, Gina.
Yeah, so I decided this was the year. It was my goal, and did the life insurance with a long-term care rider was my choice, and then wanted my long-term care policy in addition. Do I share this story? I don't even know. I'll share it. Whatever. I always share too much information, but I got declined for the long-term care. And I was so taken back by that, because I'm like, wait a minute, I just got life insurance. How did I get declined on the long-term care side? And it happens. And my specialist said, I don't know, I just was in a conversation with her, and she asked me, because we had talked about it, right? And she's like, I can't believe it. Like, it's not a life-threatening situation that you have. And she actually volunteered to write me a letter, which she did. I'm like, sure, knock yourself out, write me a letter. She wrote me a letter. I gave it to Drew. Drew went out and shopped the marketplace again for me. And as of Monday, my long-term care policy was sitting on my chair when I got in here, which is awesome. But the point is to do that one thing. Like, that was my one thing of the year that I was like, okay, so now I can get, and I already know what mine is for next year, I can get it. So I think having that list, bringing it out and taking the challenge to do that one thing for preparedness really does help. If you try to do more than one, I don't think most women will get there, because we're so busy doing the project management. That's what I think happens.
Gina, thank you for sharing that, because I think that's one of the fears we have when it comes to long-term care planning, is being declined. Nobody wants to hear no. And I know, Drew, you've got your hands full when trying to get Gina on track for her long-term care planning, but
Did it though.
he did. He's wonderful at that. Now, Drew, your work focuses on comprehensive wealth preservation and transfer strategies. When you're discussing long-term care funding, how do you balance the technical, the insurance, the design, tax efficiency, et cetera, with the human side? Because it's a balance. Because if you're talking to a female client, she wants to be heard, she wants to be seen, she wants to be part of the solution. So you can't go all in technical. So how do you balance the human side of the deeply personal conversation with the technical.
Yeah. And certainly a important thing to remember from the advisor, right, is to keep that human side in place. Keep it, front of mind. I think long-term care planning is as much about people as it is portfolios. So I mentioned that question that I ask, and again, ask it every meeting, anytime long-term care comes up, or even if it doesn't come up, it's just a soft, gentle way to bring it up. Sometimes it's not on the forefront, but depending on how that answer goes or that question, it often reveals what the client truly values. And again, this is, if it's, to your point, Kirsten, if it's women, typically it's even more on their mind, as opposed to, say, like the male prospect or client who probably isn't thinking about it, just, law of numbers. But it's typically serves as the blueprint to kind of back into the technical. We certainly don't want to lead with the technical, because if we do, it's usually goes down a bad rabbit hole, right? So we don't want to do that. I think to couple with the emotional side of it, I think it's also very important to bring up some of the negative aspects of long-term care that have gone on in the past, right? The one thought, it probably, this is usually from the males, but it's probably not going to happen to me. I think a lot of people have that mentality. It's like the zombie apocalypse, right? It's not going to happen to me. It's going to happen to my neighbor. So I think asking that or bringing it up, I always say, hey, over my 25 years of experience, these are some of the reasons why people have not implemented a long-term care plan. And plan does not mean it does not mean you have to buy an insurance policy, which again, we're going to get into. It's just having a plan in general and communicating that. But some of the perceptions, which I think we're all familiar with, it's not going to happen to me. It's a use it or lose it. My premiums are going to go up. Mom or dad had a policy and we've gotten all these rate increases throughout the years. So those perceptions could almost put the blinders on people. So addressing those right away, I think just puts people at ease. So you hear what their experience is from a long-term care. Hopefully they didn't have one, but a lot of people are going to be affected, and it's going to become a more and more commonplace. And then throwing those misconceptions out on the table as well, I think always leads to a better conversation. And people, I think, are more intrigued because now they're emotionally engaged, and obviously they're financially engaged because they want to protect everything that's taken a lifetime, for them to build up.
I just wanted to add this because I'll forget. So one of the resources that we use here is a concerns and priorities sheet. So, and we do it annually. I've done a few of them. And it's interesting because as people rank what's important, it's just such an easy way to have that conversation. And somewhere in there is going to be long-term care, somewhere weaved in. And I think my other thing that is probably my favorite thing that we provide clients with is our family estate organizer. And when you give a family estate organizer, just consider when you sit with your clients, not just at the first time when you're giving it, but it's a great opportunity to, on an annual basis, to say, okay, let's go through that. That's how you get the G money list coming out, because it's whatever's blank, right? Then becomes, hey, you should do whatever. And you'll hear different things from me in a minute about my story, but mine has some holes. My personal one has holes in it. And that's where my 2026 list has come from. But I think it's a great tool, and it just lends into the how you can help the connector really come into play, for sure.
Absolutely. That family estate organizer is phenomenal for the family to have in place. So if something does happen, they know what to do for their parents. Now, Drew, I'm getting a question. Can you please repeat the question you start the conversation with? I'm getting a couple pings here that they didn't write that down. Do you mind sharing that again?
Yep. So verbatim, what experience have you had, either directly or indirectly, when it comes to caring for an aging loved one?
Perfect. I hope
So
everybody.
directly is, hey, like, G money is going to share. She had a lot of experience with her in-laws and especially her mother. So that's a very powerful story. Indirectly would be in my case where I've sat and voluntarily does, set up family meetings with clients that have gone on claim. And that's a powerful experience too, from an advisor perspective, seeing everybody in a room and seeing those family dynamics play out firsthand. So again, asking that question, I think, is absolutely critical. It will separate you from every other advisor that's out there that wants to jump right into, a hybrid product or a life with long-term care rider. People do not want to listen. You're going to not have any success going that route. You got to go with the questions and the empathy. And it starts with, I think that question is very, very powerful.
It starts with a connection. And Gina, everyone's already clamoring now for the storytelling connection. Storytelling can be more powerful than scripts when engaging with the clients. I know you're ready for this, and I'm bracing for this because we've talked about this. Can you share examples or two of how a story, whether your own or a client's, helped make a breakthrough in helping someone take action and pulling that list out from behind them and start
Sure.
long-term planning?
I'm going to condense this story into the last 2 years, and I share it because I hope it helps people, not because I love telling this particular story, but it's part of the journey. So 2 years ago, November of 2023, I'm going to call it the discovery chapter. My husband and I were going to Florida for a long weekend. We invite my mom to come with us. She jumps all over it. She's like, absolutely. My mom at the time, 85, feisty, independent, widowed for 30-something years, advocate and caregiver for my severely special needs brother, but social, like out and about her the entire life. We're down there, and you kind of say, and I talk to my mom like at that point, like multiple times a day. It's not like, once a weeker. And I'm like, is she like a little off, or did the 2.5-hour flight, like a little jet lag? How is that possible? And in those 72 hours, we noticed that maybe it's an aging thing, that she's a little off. And then in the conversation, it comes up that I sometimes take my meds and I don't always take my meds. So we land back in Jersey, and I immediately find the pill box, the actual bottles of the medication, not knowing at the time what medications my mom was even on. So my first lesson in this is find out the medications that your loved ones are on, put them in your family estate organizer, write them on a paper. I don't care where you put them, but please find out what they are. It will make your life easier. So I find the bottles and I do quick math, and Drew knows I don't even add well. But if you have a bottle that says January and it's full and it's November, not too much math needed. So that turned into the medication list. That turned into pill box administration. That started 2 years ago for me. That turned into finding out what docs, what pharmacies. As I tell this story, think of in your own life, for those of yourselves, for your clients, what they need and how you can help them. A healthcare power of attorney, which luckily I already actually had done because that was 10 years before. And then we had our healthcare power of attorney, but I needed a healthcare power of attorney in one of the pharmacies to put my name on stuff instead of my mom's. I'm going to interrupt my own story and say the number one tough thing in this, from a logistics standpoint, is the phone number. Your loved one's phone number is everywhere, and you have to get it off because in order to help them if they're having a cognitive issue. So as the pharmacy, you have to get the phone number of your loved one off so they stop calling them, and you have to put your phone number on. And this goes on and on, right, to doctors and et cetera. Secondly was getting a diagnosis. Depending how feisty and independent your loved one is, that was a challenge, right? Just to get a diagnosis of early onset dementia. Third is the financials. Now, I had been working on the financials prior to November of 23, but finding out what's in your loved one's life, right? What do they own? How did they own it? Where did they own it? Who are the beneficiaries on it? In my particular situation, and we laugh because we all know my mom here at OneTeam, she was the CD queen. And good for her, it was generational. But it's also why her tax bill was up here, right? Because she's running around in a couple counties, so excited that she got these great CDs. I had to untangle that web and figure out, oh my gosh, let's condense everything, simplify, transfer names. And I will say that her financial advisor did a phenomenal job of helping me. He happens to be Greg Dillon. But not because I work here, because I vetted out Greg Dillon for 2 years before I had him become our financial advisor. And I will say he's done a phenomenal job. And he is on what I call my internal board of directors, which you are going to need in a long-term care situation. You made the cut too. But I know he should be excited. It's so fun. But it's that organization. And then you have to think of banking, right? Bank accounts. You're going to need documents, power of attorneys to go and put yourself on a bank account. And I had another layer in all this called guardianship. I was co-guardian on my brother, and now have, as of 2 days ago, finally, a year and a half later, have become full guardian, which is a whole nother conversation. But it's paperwork, and you have to produce those same estate docs on all this in that story. And then you start to breathe and you're like, okay, so I literally would walk into my mom's every week with a pill box stuffed in my pants, not kidding, because in her mind, she was going to still do those pills. So I would switch them out when she wasn't looking. And then we would just like keep going. And then I guess it was like February of 24. I'm on my way to work and she calls me, as she always does. She's like, G. I'm like, Mom, what's up? She's like, well, I'm just on my way to the bank to get the money to meet the girl. She got a fender bender. The girl said, I'll tell you what, instead of putting through insurance, get me $2,000. I'll meet you in the parking lot. First of all, I never heard about the fender bender until that very moment. So I took a moment, I paused, came into work, talked to Drew for a second, vented out. Now, you can go a lot of different ways on the car. I know a lot of people in my life who would not have gone this way this quickly, but I did. I drove to her house that night and I took the car keys. It was one of the most gut-wrenching things I've ever done because this woman was completely independent. But from a safety standpoint, it was the best decision I've ever made. I've made one other good one this year. But I had to do it because I was so concerned about her safety and those of others and my brother in a car, etc. What happens when you take the car keys? You can go a lot of different ways. For somebody who's completely social, you have to fill their day, right? You can't just be like, oh, took the car, see, I have a nice life, right? So that started this whole other journey of investigating, how am I going to get her out of her house? So I then became the medication management person and the social director. And I love a good socialization, but this is like a little over the top. So it's resources in your life. One, I always suggest to people, look at your local hospitals. They could have seniors community living options. Hers did. They had a program where you could enjoy different things for a very low cost. I will tell you, it was $50 a month, and you could join exercise classes. You got 2 Uber rides per month, but monitored Uber rides where they pick you up door to door. I enrolled her in that. I went to Interfaith, where you get the person that comes once a week for like an hour. It doesn't check all the boxes, but that 1 hour could be the supermarket. That 1 hour could be the hair salon around the corner. Then I did the whole caregiving thing. Now, Kirsten knows this story, but I was an investigator before I decided to become the education person here at OneTeam. And I focused on complex healthcare fraud for the attorney generals in New Jersey. And for 5 years, I led a task force on home health agencies, caregivers, and nurses, and if they did the right thing. And I will tell you, at that time, which was not so long ago, they did not. So I was pretty familiar with the way certified homemaker home health aides work. So I went to an agency because I used to do training there. And I used to say, don't go off the grid, go through the agency. The challenge with going through an agency now, and I hate to use this term, but it's true, post-COVID, is that the aides want 8-hour shifts. And when you have somebody in your life who's not going to be too willing to have them in, I'm like, can you build up? Can we start at 2 hours 3 times a week? And then Hopefully she doesn't kick you out and we do the whole thing. And the answer was no. So I'm like, now what do I do? Unless I'm going to, and I say this, unless I'm going to quit my job, which I don't want to do, what am I supposed to do? I happen to find a health and wellness coach that is on my board of directors, who has another health and wellness coach that I have engaged with to help with the transportation and the day-to-day and dropping off at friends and all of that. But that's a consideration that you have to think about financially, right? How are you paying for the services? And how much money is that going to exhaust from the pool that you're now discovering over here in this lane of where the financials are? And I will say my mom does not have a long-term care policy. So that comes into where are we taking the money and what's the most tax efficient way to draw from, and all those things come into play. So that took us like to, I guess, mid-year of 24. And then my mom's in a 2-story like colonial with a basement, and the laundry's in the basement. So we became so fearful that she was going to fall down the steps to go do the laundry that we put a lockbox on this basement. What does that mean to the caregiver? That means I'm doing her laundry. So now I'm doing pill socialization and laundry. And then that kind of comes down to, I guess, spring of 25. We're still trudging along. And spring of 25, I go in her house when she's out with some friends, and the oven was left on. And you can go a lot of different ways. But my handyman husband went there and disconnected everything that night. What does that mean to my life? Guess who's now making, not only going to the store, but now I'm making meals. So you get to a point, and as I'm talking, just think about, I'm still working. I still have a family. I still have a kid. I still have all those things going on. What's not happening is I'm not seeing anybody in my life, and I am not taking care of myself. I can tell you that. And I was planning on looking for residential communities now, like right now. This is my goal. And I will give all credit to my husband, who kicked me one night, not literally, and said, G, it's time. And I'm like, ugh. And I did it. And I looked at 10 different communities in our area. And what I will recommend to people, and others told me this, but I don't know if you know it till you do it. My mom lived here, and I was looking here, because my thing was to leave her people in her life, because she has so many friends, and everybody's going to go visit. They're actually not, because they're all doing their own thing, and they're all in their 80s too. So look for what works for you. I found a great community, and I was on the phone with 2 of my board of directors, my financial advisor and my estate planning attorney. And my estate planning attorney said, isn't New Hope in Pennsylvania? And I go, yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's 15 minutes from my house. He's like, Gina, Pennsylvania doesn't take Medicaid. This is like 2 months ago. I go, what? I had no idea that Pennsylvania doesn't accept Medicaid, which you think on the onset, you go, no big deal. You know, my girl's got her IRA and her annuities and we're good. It's going to be a big deal if she lives 10 years, because the cost of assisted living is so great. And I'll talk on New Jersey. On New Jersey, you can wipe out all your money for sure, no doubt. So I had to pivot. I went to the assisted living community where we placed my in-laws, which happens to be in Pennsylvania, but it's a CCRC. So it's a continuing care community. And there you can progress and you give an entrance fee, right? So you have to be careful when you're looking at all these communities, what the entrance fee is, what the non-refundable fee could be to come in. Where my in-laws are is continuing care. So they have independent, assisted, memory, skilled. You give an entrance fee of, let's put it at $150,000. You come in as a couple and independent, you live in your cute 1-bedroom apartment, you're spending $3,500, and that's base. That doesn't include any aids that you have and any extra activities. About, I don't know my timing, but about a year in, we had to transition my mother-in-law to memory care. $3,500 goes down to $3,000 for my father-in-law. So you go, cool. And for my mother-in-law, it was $15,000. Okay. So now I went from $3,500 to 18 grand a month. That is a significant jump. Now, my mother-in-law has since passed away. When my father-in-law exhausts that money, he goes into the entrance fee money. It's tagged to you as the couple. So you use that money. For my mom, I didn't particularly care for the assisted living piece there. So I ended up in a facility in New Jersey. We moved her 2 months ago. My recommendation when you look and explore for those who you're trying to help your clients is to say, look at everything, right? Look at aesthetics, because sometimes it matters. For my mom, it mattered. We needed a little schwank from an aesthetic standpoint. Look at their activity calendars, their menus, how many nurses they have on staff. See if you can look and talk to the executive director. Talk to as many people as you can possibly talk to before you place. And then you have to kind of look at levels of care. Because, and I'll give you my mom's example, there's a base price. Base price is $8,800 a month, assisted living, 1-bedroom little apartment. You want medication management, tag on $1,000 a month. That was one of my 2 things, safety, medication management, sure. You have to look at level of care. They all do this differently. They do a point system, but you don't really know the point system at all. So let's say she needed assistance with any ADLs, those activities of daily living, which she does not right now. Drew and I talk about ADLs all the time, but when she does, she's going to point system up, and there's going to be an extra $1,650 a month on level 1. I start doing the math and I start to hyperventilate. But from a financial standpoint, it's helping your clients go, okay, where are we pulling from, right? Right now we're pulling from an IRA, I can tell you, because that's the plan. And then we're going to go to an annuity, and we're going to keep going down the list of, from a tax standpoint, what we should exhaust in order of doing all that. So when you find it and you pull the trigger, I happen to be in a situation where I had seen the place, and then I find out about the New Hope, Pennsylvania place. I can't go. And I was like, oh my God. And I go to see a couple more places, and I drag my husband on a Friday night to the place that we chose, who he hadn't seen it. And we walk out, and we're in the parking lot, and he's like, Gee, this is it. I'm like, I said so. It's just expensive, but we're going to do it. So I text the guy who shows the sales guy, and I said, we're interested in moving forward on this apartment. I did not know by saying that there was a clock that went into place. The clock was I had 7 days to make a decision and to pay. 7 days? I'm like, what happens to 60? 7 days to make a decision. That was Monday morning. I found that out. I pulled the trigger on Tuesday. I paid a non-refundable $10,000 fee and the first month without moving her to secure that spot. It's a business. They are going to fill, it's like a hotel. They're going to fill the spot no matter what. You're just another person. They're filling it. Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Drew said. It's about peace of mind. My house, we do a phrase or word that you want for the year. Mine in January is peace of mind. And I think if we look at it quite simply to achieve excellence and not perfection, you will get empowered by doing whatever it is on that list, by helping somebody. And I think the greatest thing that I can say 2 years later is, 1, safety. I will never look back and say I made an incorrect decision. It was a tough one, but from a safety standpoint, from a socialization standpoint, it's a great one. And on my own personal journey, it's somehow I'm going to have to start putting myself on the list, as many of us have to. But it's really, I think, knowing what I'm going to do going forward. And I will, and listen, I think all of our parents that are in that age did the best they could do, and kudos to them, but it's great. I mean, coming home at midnight from my mom's house and cleaning out a closet, it's like I'm like, I'm going to purge, I'm going to get organized. I'm never doing this to my own kid. And it's not like it was purposely done to me by any means, right? But it's like, oh, what am I going to do? And I think, it's like whatever your mindset is, what Drew said earlier. There's this book, and I don't know who wrote it, but I just read it, and it's, you have to like cursing, but it's called Nobody Wants Your, and I swear, read this. It is the funniest book, but it's about looking at your life and just simplifying and creating experiences and not all the other stuff. And I think that's part of the journey, and we're all on it together.
That is such a great a great statement. We're all in this journey together. Like when my parents were looking at long-term care years ago, they didn't want to do it because my grandfather passed away in a nursing home. And nursing homes today are not the same as where my grandfather stopped. He was a farmer. He couldn't be on his farm. So he turned his face and looked at the wall and he was done. So we can empower our clients to have a dignity in their aging process. And if they need the care, we can help them age in place at home or get to a facility that's going to meet their needs. Now, we're coming up at a time we're a little bit over. So, Drew, any last thoughts on when it comes to the planning process that you'd like to add to this?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to life insurance, we typically talk about the 3 M's. You probably heard Dave Allison mention this before, right? Life insurance is often the most missold, mismanaged, and misunderstood asset that a client owns. When it comes to long-term care and collaborating with the other advisors, like Gina mentioned, the CPA, the estate planning attorney or elder care attorney, the financial advisor, and the insurance specialist, which oftentimes could be the same individual. We reference the 3 C's, which is really providing clarity, communication, and coordination, really helping the client maintain control, dignity, and family harmony, right, through one of the life's most emotional transitions. So if anybody has the opportunity, and again, not that we want this, but you talk about really stepping up at a time where your clients need you. If you have a client that is experiencing a claim, be part of that. I know a lot of us want to look for selling, right, policies and taking on clients. But I think that opportunity, you talk about career changing, being the quarterback is extremely important. The CPA often is not going to quarterback that meeting. The attorney is not going to quarterback that meeting. But us as the insurance or financial advisors to say, hey, this family needs us. We need to quarterback, bring this meeting together. Again, I've lived through several of those meetings. They're clients for lives, right? The kids are clients for lives. They're typically adults. And those other advisors become real centers of influence that we work with closely. So that would be my one takeaway. Ask the question up front. And if you do come across a client that's having an experience or a claim, don't just have a service person or somebody on the team just send them the claim paperwork. Embrace it. It really is. It's life-changing for us as advisors, has such a huge impact on the family, and we'll be rewarded, both emotionally and financially from that experience.
Thank you, Gina and Drew. I think this could have been a 2-hour conversation or all-day conversation because this is going to impact all of us, whether it's our family or ourselves. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for giving us tips on changing the conversation, because I do believe at the end of the day, we have a fiduciary responsibility to talk with our clients about this, to help them help themselves and their family shift from their family members being the caregiver to the care specialist so that they can also be there for their family and live their life. But thank you all for joining us. I know that when you give us your time, you're not doing what you do best, which is being in front of your clients. So thank you for joining us today. And again, Gina and Drew, from my heart to yours, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. It really was a pleasure. Thanks. Good to see you guys. Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bucket Plan on Demand, brought to you by C2P, an organization whose purpose is to educate, train, grow, and support holistic financial advisors so families can achieve true prosperity. Subscribe today for the latest episodes and insights. Visit c2penterprises.com to learn how we can help support and enhance your advisory business. At the time of delivery and any subsequent publishing, information was deemed reliable, but is subject to change by the time of listening or viewing. The contents of this piece include options and projections of C2P, are subject to change, and are for informational purposes only. The information provided in this presentation is not intended to be individual investment, tax, or legal advice.